Welcome to the Social for Brokers podcast. Today I have with me David Woodbridge, a very known name in the mortgage world. So David is a regional sales director at Primis and he's got an extensive background in training. I put on my Instagram story yesterday, he doesn't know this, we were chatting before the podcast. Put an Instagram story up about I'm having David Woodbridge on, and we had Melanie Spencer message me saying that you used to work together, and she's like, I can't wait for him to go on. Sam Lappin was saying that he can't wait to listen to it, another guy from Primis. I was speaking to Kate from Redditch Mortgage Advice. So you've got a few fans out there, David, so I'm sure a few people will tune into this one.
It was worth giving them those £10 each to do that.
30 quid well spent, mate. So today I really wanted to get into what David does within his Primis role to support his brokers. So he heads up Linear Financial Solutions, but also what brokers can do to help grow their business. David's been in training since 2008, so I'm sure he's got a few top tips of how to grow your business. He's been through, obviously, the tough times starting in 2008 with the start of the recession. And it'd be great to hear how he would teach people to handle that period of time again, because we know times are getting tough and recession's getting mentioned more and more throughout the papers. We don't know if it's coming, but it'd be great to get into that side of things. But without further ado, David, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate the invite. Really do.
Great to have you on. Right, is it David or Dave? What do you prefer?
It's Dave. I'm only in trouble if it's David. Yeah.
I always go by LinkedIn names whenever I see people. It's David Woodbridge on LinkedIn. So
it is, yeah. There's the professional view, and then there's what I prefer. Or Woody actually is probably what most people know me in Primis now. So
is it? Okay. I'll stick with Dave. I'm not on the Woody level yet. I've got to earn that, I think. Right, so first to start off with, thanks so much for coming on the podcast. We had this booked in probably about a month ago or so now, and I wasn't very well, so we had to cancel and reschedule. And we've decided to reschedule it for the week where we've only got 3 days to squeeze in, 5 days worth of work to squeeze into 3. So I wanted to first get a bit of an introduction to how you got into the industry, where you are now, and what you do on a daily basis.
Yeah, sure. So my kind of... I went to uni and did journalism, so of course that's a natural link into the mortgage world, isn't it? But I was in retail finance originally, so credit cards and those wonderful store cards that you got charged about 50% APR and stuff when you signed up for a pair of trainers. And I fell into training, and that's kind of what I've done. I've sold insurance over the phone. I've done call centers. I've done all of that kind of stuff. But this place gave me an opportunity in training, and I just kind of fell in love with it, I guess. Mm-hmm. And then kind of how I got into the industry really was just a random phone call out of the blue from my old manager at what was Personal Touch Financial Services at that time, and said, we're looking for a trainer. This, heavily involved in systems, in particular our system toolbox as it still is. Mm-hmm. Would you be interested? Went down for the interview, thankfully got it. That was 2008, as you said, and kind of just really then the learning curve was massive. And I remember, and I'm going to share a story, and he'll find it funny, but there's one of our advisors, a gentleman called Chris, that's all I will say, but he'll know who it is. He was one of our advisors at the time, and he says, I remember you being young, and how can you teach me what to do? You don't know what you're doing, and all this kind of stuff. So it was kind of overcoming that. Mm-hmm. Recently saw him last week and still remembers having that conversation. Says, and actually now massive respect, but it was just, I had to learn and I had to soak it up and I had to absorb everything and respect what the industry was and get my head around it. As you say, working with Mel, she was another one of the trainers there at Personal Touch, and literally just learn every day something new, different way. Got I was through the CII as opposed to CMAT, got qualified, did all of that kind of stuff. So just really, and then developed. So training was a great foot in, actually, because I don't actually think the industry is blessed with brilliant training across the board. So I think if that's something that you are good at or you're passionate about, I think this is a great industry to be in, because you can really make a difference. And hopefully anyone that's been on my courses may disagree, but hopefully I have tried to make a difference over the years in training and learn this brilliant industry that we're in now.
It's interesting you talk about training, because I can count on one hand the amount of great trainers that, when I was at Countrywide, we used to have training all the time. They gave fantastic training, but there was one lady that stuck out in my mind, Lindsay Hall, and she made it so engaging and kept us interested. It was the same stuff over and over again, really, but it was the way that delivered it. What is the secret to being a good trainer?
I think there's a couple. I think often, firstly, I think you've got to want to train people. I think you've got to enjoy it. I think there's a misconception that training is just standing in front of a group of people with some PowerPoint slides. And I think in this industry, many of our firms, our advisors, and will have been on presentations that are just literally being read from the same slide. Well, that's not training to me. Training is about, the key thing for a trainer has to be, the course isn't yours. The course isn't being put on for you. So however knowledgeable you are and however big your ego is, it doesn't matter. The only reason that course is happening is for those 10, 15, 20 people that are sat in the room opposite you. So I would always go into anything that I ever did of kind of, right, what do these people, what do I want them walking out of that door having, one, done, and be experienced and felt. Whereas too many people, when they start writing training courses or program, it's what am I going to say? What am I, that will happen. You'll do that naturally, because if you know your subject matter and you know what these people want from you, then you'll do it. I just think that the other thing is, sometimes we don't always, as trainers, really good trainers, and every good trainer that I've ever seen train, worked with, I've worked with some fantastic trainers over the years as well. One thing they're always really, really good at is almost being in amongst the delegates. If you think of when you were at school, it was very much teacher at the front, kids at the back, and we listened to this focal figure. I think as you become adults, and adults have their own experiences and their own things to share, they don't want to be taught, they don't want to be taught at, they want to be involved in it, and they want to be having discussions, and they want to be they might have to learn a new skill or some new knowledge, but they've already got knowledge, a base to work on, not like a child learning their 2 times table, so they have to go and literally recite it again and again and again until it sinks in. Most people come into a training course are coming with knowledge already and life experiences. So for me, it's about using those and drawing those on to then build on the new knowledge or the new skill that you're doing. That's probably what I'd say.
It's exactly like you say, getting involved with this is what that Lindsay used to do. It used to be sat down with us and having a chat and trying to engage with us. One funny story before we move on. I remember, Lindsay, we went to a 3-day listing. It was about listing properties training, and it was always a piss up at the end of the night, but the next day you had to be there at 9 o'clock. Well, everybody got absolutely battered on the first night. You get in there and she says, I've got one rule: you're not allowed to yawn, because it makes it feel as if you're boring. If you yawn, you've got to recite a nursery rhyme. Well, nobody yawned for like 3 days solid. It was hilarious. But that's it, getting involved with people, treating you like adults instead of just preaching off you. So you do the training, but your role now is you head up Linear Financial Solutions. Could you explain how that kind of like works under Primis?
Yeah, absolutely. So up until last year, I was kind of training director at Primis, and I've moved away from the training now as such, with a view to building and working on an academy, a route into the industry, which I'm sure we'll talk about later on. But I got a call out of the blue from Richard Coulson, who's our kind of national sales director at Primis, and said, we want you to come and join our team. There's a vacancy. Would you be interested? And if you've ever met Rich, that's probably not a question you say no to. It was kind of, that interests me, actually. It was kind of, I wanted to move in to try something else, do something different, but also still still work on something that I'm really passionate about, which is trying to get fresh blood, new blood into this industry. And you know, I've been very lucky, as many of the people I'm sure you've had on the podcast, that this industry's given me lots of experiences and lots of great things, and it's a great industry to work in, but it's a tough one to get into. So this role gave me an opportunity to try and build that within Linear. So Linear is a Primis-owned business. It's a self-employed model. So in effect, it is a group of self-employed advisors working under a banner, but working to their goals and what they want to do for their families and loved ones and so on, but trading under a controlled kind of brand that we can help support them grow, help keep them safe on the road, which is absolutely crucial in a regulated kind of world, as we know. But it gives us the opportunity to bring people in and kind of look after them, really, and give them a nursery, as well as experienced people coming in, you know, more than happy.
And I wanted to speak about a few of the success stories under Linear, because I've worked closely with some brokers in Linear. And it's a conversation that I had with Pam and Nina Brown last week on the podcast, that there's not many young women in the industry. And I think, yes, you have got some fantastic brokers, but the people that spring to mind do come from Linear. Can you talk about some of the ladies that have joined Linear and got into the business?
Yeah, and you know, the first thing I'll say, I'll take absolutely zero credit for these ladies' success. This is, you know, the successes that they've had are just phenomenal. But you know, before I name names and get into it, I think, you know, women in this industry are absolutely flying, and it's so good to see. And it's you know, when I was in the industry, even 2008, which doesn't seem that long ago, you know, it was a very male, still is very male, let's be honest. But you know, Primis are passionate about supporting and growing fantastic females to smash us blokes out the water. We run a ladies event called our Leading Ladies Day, which, you know, really does celebrate and help develop their businesses, and you know, it's just brilliant to see. So 2 examples of that: Kate McTurnan is one, who I know is probably listening underneath in the floor below. But so Kate, Redditch Mortgage Advice, she was within Linear, and you know, is now kind of growing and massively growing a business. I think I was speaking to her last week. I think she's got about 13 odd people now there, which is just phenomenal, and growing out into Redditch Mortgage Advice and Birmingham Mortgage Advice, the Mortgage Advice Group. And she probably had no real plan that was what was going to happen, but through the support, I hope, that she got within Linear and within Primis, through that growth, we've been able to help her. But I mean, talk about driven. There's a lady who's driven out of her mind and doesn't probably quite know how good she is either. So she's fantastic. And then kind of Kate was probably the first, I guess. And then once people see what Kate's doing, well, actually, I could do that. You know, I'm as good as anyone, so why not? And so we had Kylie Ann Gatecliffe, CAG Financial, supported by her fantastic team. Again, was in Linear for a number of years. But the beauty of Linear being so close to Primis is that route into your own firm is there. And that's exactly what she's done. And this year, recently, as I think it was kind of March, April time, may have been a bit before then, but Kylie Ann's moved out with her team, and kind of CAG Financial are now one of their own. So we've, you know, we've got some fantastic advisors within Linear as well, who maybe their aspiration isn't to be their own firm. It's quite happy within Linear, working hard and doing what they do there. And I think that's the beauty of Linear, I guess, is you've got some fantastic success stories like Kate and Kylie Ann, who have taken that decision. But you've also got some individuals who kind of say, yeah, this I'm quite happy. This is where I want to trade. And you know, I've got no real aspirations to run my own business. I just want to earn a decent living, look after my clients in the right way, and kind of feel.
The reason I ask you that is, I'm not here to promote any network, any company to go under. You can go DA, you can do whatever you want.
Absolutely.
But what I see with linear is I've seen it work. I think that's probably why I speak quite fondly of it, that a lot of people when they're starting out in the industry is they're not sure where to go. And I was speaking to a lady last week about it. Linear give you that platform to get under someone, know your compliance is done, know you've got the support, know you've got David to pick up the phone to. And I think that's really good when you're starting out in the industry. But yeah, so that's a great way if you want to get into the industry and have that support. You're obviously speaking to brokers day in, day out at the moment. What are the top tips you're giving to people to either weather the storm or grow their business? What's your big piece of advice to help people grow businesses during this day and age?
I think the first bit of advice, and it's not related to the marketplace being choppy or threats of recessions coming down the tracks. The advice I would always give is step out your comfort zone. Just flip and do it. If you've got an idea or you've got a thought process or you've got, I talk to people about, I know we'll talk about social media again in a bit more detail, but just do it. Just start that ball rolling and so that's the first thing. Get out of your own head a little bit. And Nina Brown, you mentioned Nina, she gave that as one of her tips on a call she gave to us a month or so ago. And she's absolutely right. Just get out your own head, just have a go. But I think in terms of the situation we're potentially going to be in and, cost of living and so on, I think you're in trouble if all your eggs are in one basket.
Okay.
And, so what I mean by that, if all you do is mortgages and you don't really talk to your client about other product areas, then you're always going to be at the whim of the mortgage market and you're always going to be at the whim of what the economy is doing and interest rates and so on and so on. So for us, our tip always within Primis and what we always try and encourage our firms to do is you've really got to, I don't mean spread yourself thin to where you can't give the client fantastic service, but you've got to have the ability to say, right, what is my menu in effect that my client can come and see me for and walk away with? If it's just the mortgage, I would say you're going to be in trouble if the kind of fears are realised. If you can say, well, we'll look at their mortgage, we'll look at their protection, we'll look at their general insurance, we'll look at their will, we'll look at their maybe some commercial, some business protection, we'll look at their maybe some equity release, we'll look at some, and you start adding these different product areas into your kind of, I always call it a kind of toolkit, then you're going to be far more future-proofed against the flow of the market, because you'll always have people will always need some of those products I've just listed. Have you got an investment and pension referral option if you're not able to do it yourself? Have you got income streams that isn't just maybe the traditional, I've got my prop fee from the mortgage and happy days?
That's what I was going to say. I'm glad you brought that up. Is all of these things, I think a lot of people say, yeah, I've only got so many hours in the day. Would you recommend outsourcing the likes of, say, like your protection, your equity release, your business protection?
Just have the facility for the client to have access to that product. So It may be that you don't do it. It may be that as a, and I mean this with all the love and respect to every single mortgage broker in the UK, but not every mortgage broker is great at selling protection. Not every protection advisor would make a great mortgage broker. And so it's playing to your strengths, yes. And if mortgages are your strength, brilliant. But it's all about income streams. So if you don't want to do the protection, one, because you've maybe never been shown, two, maybe because you're not confident enough in your own product knowledge or whatever, or you're just too flipping busy with how many mortgages you're doing at the moment.
That's what I was going to say, Pete. I think people listening to that like, but David, I know I've got to do it, but I haven't got the time. But you're saying, look, if you haven't got, in an ideal world, yes, do it all yourself.
Absolutely.
But if you haven't got the time, you could utilize other companies. And do you recommend teaming up with people or is there a place that people can go to get that information?
I mean, yeah, and one of the advantages of a network, whichever the network it is, is there will be people in there. Primis, we've got a facility of a referral facility for protection. We have protection firms within Primis that would happily have conversations with people about that. And I'm sure that's reflective in networks all over the UK that facility is there. So if you're a whatever advisor you are, whatever product it is your specialism, and you are thinking about kind of putting up the barriers against the fear of recessions and so on, it is about thinking about where your income streams are. So if you're not confident, you haven't got the time, ideal world, do it yourself. But as you say, but if you haven't, then don't be precious or fear this, well, they'll nick my client kind of thing. Because if you've built a good relationship with an individual, you scratch my back, that kind of thing, you know, there's always an opportunity to.
And people aren't going to risk taking one client off you to do their remo when you're feeding them 10 leads a month.
Exactly right.
It doesn't make sense. I think it's kind of that scarcity mindset, and I have it as well sometimes, is if I pass that client over, they're going to take, no, but if you've got to be good enough for them to come back to you. I think that's where it stems from, doesn't it? So you talked about, obviously, training. You can become a mortgage broker, protection broker, but you talked about like an academy that you're doing at the minute. Could you give a brief insight into what that does? And it just might be useful for people to hear that are looking to get into the industry, what kind of training they actually have to undertake.
Absolutely, yeah. So as I say, it's been a you know, again, the industry has had an issue over the years of it becoming quite an aging industry. The great news when I go to events now with Primis is that's massively changing, and you look across and the average age in the room is plummeting over the last kind of however long I've been in the industry. It's definitely reducing, which is fantastic. But you know, we have to get new people in. We have to encourage and support people into coming in. And as we know, you know, with competent advisor status and so on, it's not always easy to get in. If I'm sat doing a fantastic job in a separate business, a separate industry, and think, oh, I quite fancy doing that, it isn't quite as easy as just picking up the phone and hoping someone gives you a job. We do have to get qualified. So if you're looking to give mortgage advice, some people listening to this will know this very well, so apologies if teaching suck eggs, but you'll need your CMAP qualifications or an equivalent. So in order to support that, Primis are now offering CMAP courses that will be virtual courses that you can attend, and you can kind of get some real intensive training just before your exams and come through that. But then also you then need a place to trade and a home to learn the job. And I think that's often the hardest part, because, you know, advisors looking to grow their businesses, if they're small businesses, they probably haven't got the time to give to a new individual. They'd probably love to. Every part of them says, I know I need to, but they haven't probably got the time to give enough attention and focus to a new advisor. So they often will look for an experienced advisor to hit the ground running to grow as quickly as they can. What we're trying to do through a combination of using apprenticeship schemes, so we're currently in really, really close to launching a Primis apprenticeship scheme that will enable, you know, Primis firms, but also, you know, anyone looking for an apprenticeship. We may have an opportunity via Linear within Primis or within a Primis AR. So you'll be able to get a mortgage advisor apprenticeship, or you'll be able to get a business administration apprenticeship, which is a great starting point, actually, doing admin and getting into dealing with clients and understanding it to see if it suits you. So that's the first thing we're doing. The CMAP thing is a natural progression, but then once you're kind of all through that and you're signed off and you know your day one as a mortgage advisor starts, then what we want to do is we have mentor facilities that enable somebody to kind of mentor that individual through that first kind of 6 months, because we just want to help people get into and start their new career in whatever this might be. And as you say,
great way to get into it, especially apprenticeships. Going to just bring that age down of mortgage brokers down to, do you know what I mean? Do you think there'll be much comeuppance from customers saying, well, you're only 18. You don't know mortgages, or do you think that will be an issue at all?
I think that's always there. I think you at the end of the day, you're always going to get clients that think that. But if I just go back to the point I made, and I'm smiling because if I think about Chris and his comment at that time, is like, eventually, if you've got the knowledge, you'll prove to them, all right, an 18-year-old sitting down will be what can an 18-year-old tell me about mortgages? And everyone on listening to this will have a view on whether that's going to work, or whether they'd want to have mortgage advice from an 18-year-old. All I can say is, if I look across Primis and where we are, some of our successful kind of mortgage advisors, we've got early 20s, 19, 20, 21 when they started through apprenticeship schemes and so on. I think at the end of the day, what does a client want? They want a fantastic service, and they want somebody to know what they're talking about. Well,
doesn't matter the age, then, does it? I suppose
doesn't really. No, all right. If they've bought a mortgage themselves and they've been through the process themselves, of course that's going to help. But attitude and knowledge you can learn. If you've got the right attitude, you've got the right desire.
Yeah, and that'd be interesting. Actually, it leads me nicely into the social media section, and we're only going to touch on social media because I think we've covered a lot here about how people can get into the industry. But social media side, if we're bringing the average age down of mortgage brokers, these are 17, 18, 19-year-olds, are people that have been brought up with social media. Do you know what I mean? They would have had the iPad growing up, and I think that age range will be able to market themselves not a lot better, but a lot easier, just because they have those foundations of knowledge. How are you seeing the shift with brokers at the moment with social media, and what are the best practices that you're seeing that people are doing with social?
I mean, I think for me with social media, it's something that for many people is not a natural thing.
Good point.
I can put my holiday snaps on, or what I'm eating for dinner. That I get why I'm doing that, but the thing I hear the most about social media when talking to our advisor, but what do I post? And it's always the age-old question. I know I need to post regularly, but what do I post? And you ask me about what do others do well. If there's plenty of names across Primis. You only have to open LinkedIn and you'll see many of them. And what they do well is they just engage. They just talk about themselves. They talk about what they've done that day. Very rarely will they say, come and talk to me if you want a mortgage. Very rarely will it be so technically driven where we've got to put lots and lots of, I'm not saying don't do this, by the way, but if you're putting a post on that needs lots and lots of regulatory wording on, the content is probably going to be very driven towards the technical business, and the products.
Yeah. This is something that I've spoken to a lot of our clients, because when we create 3 posts per week for people, and a lot of them will be business oriented, so I'll be updating them about what's happening with the base rate, how a buy-to-let mortgage works, what life insurance is. That's great that we put out, but we always say to them, try and upload personal stuff in between. So it's not all business, it's not all personal.
Yeah.
So a bit of a shameless plug here, but we've developed a post planner, and it's got 365 ideas for social media posts for people.
Yeah.
So in 1 week, the way we split it is if you start with a Monday, talk about life insurance. Tuesday, tell a good news story. Wednesday, share a photo of a pet or your kids or what you're doing this week. Thursday, share an industry article, what's going on in the industry. Friday, share your favorite song. And that calendar, so we do this calendar, you can get in touch with us. It's 100 plus that, it's 365 ideas for the whole year.
Love it.
And exactly what you've just said there, it breaks up the business stuff, because you can't always talk about business, but you can't always speak about personal stuff as well.
I mean, bless her, she probably didn't realise she's getting such a plug, but Kylie Ann Gatecliffe, for example, which she went absolutely viral kind of, I think it was this summer last year. And all she did was put a kind of little post on around, what people put when they're transferring money to their mates. And, it went in the Daily Mirror. She got, I texted her, it went in the Birmingham Mail. I said, you realise you're now famous in Birmingham as well? And
that is a big thing, because we're both Brummys.
Absolutely. If you're in the Birmingham Mail, you've made it. But you're absolutely, what that did for what she said was, you know, I just did it as a bit of a joke for 30 seconds, and yet the spread and the kind of reach that got. So I think people overthink it a little bit too much, and quite, you know, understandably, we've got to be mindful. We're in a regulatory environment, and we have to be very mindful of not stepping out of what we can and can't say. But personality has to come through. I mean, years ago, we used to knock on doors, and not me, but, you know, you hear of stories in the industry of people knocking on doors, and, you know, it's a relationships thing. Well, social media has kind of replaced that. We're not allowed to knock on doors anymore, but what we have to do is get our personality out there and build relationships virtually. And the only way you're going to do that is make a client go, they're a bit like me. They're quite relatable to me. Actually, I'd quite like to talk to them, or I'd quite like to do business with them. If it's quite, you know, very stuffy and so on, then you may not get the client. You've got to position it where, for me, and you'll know far better, you're the blooming expert on this, Chris, but it is that, what are the clients you want, and be relatable to that group of people.
And once they get to know you, exactly like you said, once they get to know you and they're relatable to you, it's so much easier to talk to them about business. You can't shove business down their throat and then talk about your dog. You need to get them to believe in you first. And this is a conversation we're having with a few people, is if you're just starting out, our services might not be right for you at this time, because it's almost like shouting into an empty room. Get out there, go and tell people about yourself, get them to build an audience, and then you can go and sell stuff to them. Sell them stuff to them off the cold. But no, that's really interesting. It's great to hear what other people are doing on social media, and exactly like you said, what you might find mundane or boring or very simple, like Kylie Ann did, other people will find really interesting. I think that's what we forget, don't we, sometimes, that because we do it every day, we think that, like you with training, you could say the same thing every day up there in front of slides because you know it. But actually, these people don't.
Absolutely.
So I've got to put it in a different way, or just talk about the same things, but get them to engage with what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we do take it for granted with the terms we use, the language we use. We take it for granted, and clients are interested. You know, they do want advice, and
it's just at what different stages. Interesting. Another guest had on, Ben Moore, spoke about the dartboard analogy, that a social media post will be a dart, and you could throw it. The outer ring, you've got people that are maybe making a decision, who just like skirting around the subject. The inner ring then is people that are nearly at the decision, and then the centre is the bullseye of somebody that's ready to take the action and book a morning appointment. You throw a dart, you've got to make sure you throw them in all three bits, really. But it doesn't mean that when you hit the outer ring, people are going to sign up straight away, but they might move closer to the inner ring over time with more and more content.
That's good.
Right. Well, so strategy question. This is really interesting. Great question that I ask, because it gets so many different answers. I'm looking forward to hearing yours. So we're going to pretend that you've moved to the north of Scotland. You've got a laptop, a mobile phone, and an internet connection. What would you do as a new business to start generating leads?
I mean, firstly, you don't need anything else. I mean, that's the first thing. And we have a saying in Primis. It's bringing the old school into the new school. And I think, you know, if we think about the old school ways, it was, and I'm not suggesting this is what we should do now, by the way, but it was going around, it was knocking on doors, it was going and speaking to people. Well, we can't do that anymore. And if I've got a phone and I've got a laptop, then for me, it's about, how do I get, you mentioned it yourself, how do I get my message out there? So one of the things I always talk about initially is kind of thinking about, and this is one actually I nicked from Darren Williams, by the way, one of our fantastic principals. So he talks about a referral compass. Okay. Up is your parents, down is your children, out one way is your friends, and out the other way is your siblings. And I always think that's a fantastic starting point, right? And what I think with that as well is, whenever I speak to an advisor and they say, oh, I'm struggling for leads, I always kind of say, well, okay, let's start telling me about, who's your best mate? Oh, well, it's Bob. Right, what does Bob do? Well, yeah, he works here, and me and him met down the golf club. Right, golf club then. There's a group of people that meet at that golf club that know you and Bob, right? So if Bob's got the links in that golf club, then how are we going to get your message out there? So this is kind of all the old school ways of what do your kids do? Oh, well, she goes horse riding, he plays football, whatever. And I've been very stereotypical there. I didn't mean to be, but okay. So little Johnny plays football every Saturday at the club. Okay, so you maybe there's groups of people congregating at that club throughout the week, probably different age groups. You've got to link in straight there because your lad plays there. So start talking to parents, start talking, doing this over the phone, admittedly, because I'm in the middle of Scotland. But it is that, thinking about your first of all, your circle that's close to you. Where are the opportunities where people congregate, where people who need mortgages, protection, wills, whatever, they congregate somewhere. So that's the first thing. The other thing, if you've got a phone, a lot of our firms will do this as well. On that phone will be list of contacts. A lot of our firms will do this thing where they just say, right, get 20 names out of that phone, whether it's friends, family, whatever, and tell them what you do. Tell them why you need to have a conversation with them. Tell them what value you bring. If you then got a laptop as well, then you're opening the doors to that social media stuff, that incredible free marketing tool that every one of us sits on every single day, kind of scrolling through. And for me, you said it yourself, actually, Chris, and I totally agree. At the moment, until you build up a presence, there's no point saying, can someone talk to me about mortgages? Because you are shouting in an open room. So just follow mortgage advisor, search and just follow every single mortgage advisor and start talking in that community. Get on Facebook, your local area. If you're in Scotland now, start learning the area and be on local Scotland groups and so on. You can see my absolute naivety with any place in Scotland. I do apologise. But, on Facebook, there will be hundreds of local little groups of people interacting every single day, talking about their world in their little towns or villages. And wherever you are in the UK, whether it's north of Scotland or across the water in Ireland or south, whatever, is get on those and start showing that you are the expert in this particular expertise, which our world is mortgages, and just start building your presence and start building your profile and talking to people. Instead of a knocking door, we do it by posts. Instead of ringing doorbells, we put DM messages in or so on and so on. But unless you raise your profile, unless you start talking about what you do, how is anyone going to know? And with a phone and a laptop, for me, you've just got every single tool available to start shouting from the world about what you do.
I absolutely love that answer. And you can tell you're a trainer and a very good one, because I have mortgage brokers on here and it's exactly the same as me. I'd ask that question. I've got a million ideas buzzing around my head. I'd do this and then I'll probably do that. And then I'll go off on this tangent and do that. And that's what a lot of the answers are. And that's great because we're not trainers. Whereas what you've done is you've gone methodical. You've gone, right, what I do to start with is I love that referral compass though. Love that.
Yeah.
Go and speak to them. Then you speak about the golf club and you using real life here, going to speaking to people, even standing in a football changing room or that kind of thing. Then you said you take the phone and phone them. Then you talk about the laptop and you're really methodical. If I was a mortgage broker, I'd go back and listen to that and record the last 2.5 minutes, 3 minutes of what David spoke about and go and integrate that into your business right now. That is exactly how you get leads. That is absolute gold, those last 3 minutes, honestly, David. There's just everything's been covered there. You're talking about your face-to-face, you're talking about Facebook groups. And I like that you mentioned with social media, it's not just a case of posting in those groups and running. It's interacting, it's speaking to people, it's building relationships. Social media, it's called social for a reason because it's all about conversating, and we need to really reaffirm that fact because everybody wants to put a post out there and go viral. For example, Kylie Ann, she did a post, it went viral. Nobody saw the 20 posts she did before or the 100 posts that she did after. They've just seen that one. That doesn't mean Kylie Ann hasn't worked her butt off up until that post, or even after that, and you've seen the growth. It's just that one got chosen to go viral.
Absolutely.
So we've got to remember that social media is about conversating with people. You can hire companies like us to do your social media, to create you the posts. You can buy a calendar from us, but ultimately you will get the best results if you put yourself out there and you interact with people. And I think you agree with me on that, Dave, wouldn't you?
Massively. This industry is relationships. That's all it is. It's building relationships with people. Like any industry is making sure that people aren't, it's so old, and as a trainer I'm almost embarrassed to use the old cliches, but they're old cliches because they work, because people buy people. And it's not, flip me, well done Dave, that's rocket science, but it's absolutely true. And if your personality as a person, as somebody I want to speak to potentially about my mortgage, does not come across, I'm going to be attracted to somebody where they are a bit like me, and I can relate to them, and I can nervously pick up that phone from somebody I've never met on social media and make a call, because it's daunting for a client. You've got to remember that. They're not going to do it to a faceless post. They're not going to do it to a brand. They're going to do it to a person. I like that. I like Kylie Ann. She talks my language. That was funny. I think she'd be good. It's that kind of stuff.
And that's what you spoke about there, is for them to pick up the phone to you, they might have had to see your brand and your face 20 times over before they pick up the phone. They might not have liked any of your posts. They might not have commented. They might not have even sent you a message. But after 6 months of seeing your content and building trust, they pick up the phone to you. And I think we can expand on that quote, people buy from people. I use it all the time. I love it. But people buy from trusted people. People buy even more from trusted people. So for a trusted person could be your brother's friend, a sibling, a work colleague. But trust on social media, they could trust you because you've spoke to them about mortgages for the last month on your social media content. That's how you build the trust online.
Absolutely.
Great, fantastic end to the podcast. Dave, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. Thank you so much. That was, honestly, go back, rewind the podcast, go and record that. That was incredible. To say thank you, a little bit of a thank you, I'll donate £10 to a charity of your choice. Dave, which one did you want me to donate to?
I really appreciate it, Chris. It's something that's close to my family, actually, through relatives and my own mother. So the Stroke Association would be really appreciated. Thank you.
Definitely. I've made a note of that. We'll make the donation for you. Dave, thank you so much for coming on. Great charity. Just as a little thank you to say thanks for your time. I know it's really busy at the minute, so thank you for coming on. And hopefully we'll have you on again when we can recap on where you've taken some apprenticeships, maybe in 12 months' time. Let's see how many people you've got through this scheme and into the industry.
We'll get them on. They'll be more interested than me through their journey. We'll get some on, Chris. That'd be great.
Great to get some on. Thanks again, Dave. Really appreciate it.
Cheers, Chris. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks.